Hi there. We've had a lot of attention on various types of dementia in the news recently. Chris Hemsworth, best known for his role as Thor in the Marvel movies, recently found out through genetic testing that he has a significantly increased chance of developing Alzheimer's disease. Through the Disney Plus documentary series Limitless, Hemsworth confirmed this fear provoking diagnosis. The actor actually carries two copies of the APOE4 gene from both parents, which puts him among only 2 to 3% of people who have an increased risk of developing Alzheimer's, up to 10 times more than those without either copy of that gene. This has prompted Hemsworth to take some time away from acting while considering next steps on implementing a dementia prevention program. Hemsworth will give us a deeper understanding of how we might be able to fight against such an awful diagnosis later down the road. Hemsworth has a family history of dementia that is considered familial Alzheimer's disease. He presently has a grandfather who suffers from the late onset dementia. Then we have Bruce Willis, star of action films like Die Hard and Pulp Fiction, and he's been recently diagnosed with a very rare form of dementia, frontotemporal dementia. The 67-year-old actor began experiencing difficulty in language and speech 2 years ago, a common symptom in this type of dementia, which affects the temporal lobes on either side as well as the frontal part of the brain. Although it's not a widespread condition among older adults, researchers suggest that it is one of the leading causes for the early onset cases across all ages, accounting for up to 40% from those cases under the age of 65 years old. And then we have Michael J. Fox with Parkinson's disease. Actor Michael J. Fox has faced the adversity of a Parkinson's diagnosis since 1991 at the young age of 29 years old. His health challenges have only grown in recent years. At nearly 60, he is experiencing new symptoms, including memory loss, which is particularly difficult in memorizing acting lines for TV or movies, which used to come very easy to him. I understand he used to be able to memorize pages at a time, and now he's being challenged. Neurodegenerative disease affects dopamine-producing neurons in the brain, which causes gradual development of various physical and mental impairments that vary from person to person. And I want to emphasize just how courageously Michael Fox navigates each day with such grace and perseverance. Many people diagnosed with Parkinson's may also have what they call Lewy body buildup in the brain, causing Lewy body dementia. You can learn more about Lewy body dementia by visiting Caregiver Relief and check out our extensive library on the many different types of dementia we face. It's important to note Parkinson's is a complex disorder affecting more than just body movement. It can also impact memory and thinking. This includes anything from concentration troubles to severe impairments that affect everyday living. Furthermore, emotional states such as apathy, depression, or anxiety are common non-motor symptoms associated with Parkinson's disease. Now I want to talk about our athletes. We hear every day about an athlete that has suffered the effects of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. There is a growing number of former professional football players that have had increased significantly. Many are young athletes still in their prime. Scientific research has found that the condition affects not only NFL veterans, but also high school and college athletes. It was found that a shocking 99% of deceased NFL players' brains were tested that showed signs of CTE. While these findings are heartbreaking, it's important to note that they could be influenced by selection bias, as those with suspected symptoms were more likely to contribute their brain specimens for study than healthy individuals. I recommend everybody that has any kind of history of dementia in their family to really seriously consider donating your brain after death for research studies. I started this audio cast with questions that is being asked of me. At what age does dementia start? There are so many different forms of dementia and many causes of dementia. There's genetics, lifestyle choices, and environmental factors all play a part in the potential for developing dementia. It's not just a disease that happens in old age. We are seeing younger people with dementia. So today I'm going to discuss young onset dementia, also called early onset dementia. We all know about Alzheimer's disease. It's thought of as a disease that affects old people. When dementia occurs at such early ages, it is often misdiagnosed. Though most often seen in older people at retirement age, a younger person can develop dementia at a far younger age than we ever anticipated. This leads me to bring your attention to early onset Alzheimer's disease, also called young onset dementia. This is a disease that affects younger people before the typical retirement years. This disease brings its own unique set of challenges for caregivers looking to support their loved one. From managing financial commitments such as mortgages and college loans while they are still active members of society, younger people that develop early onset often have children and other family members who depend on them. These obstacles require extra attention when providing care. With thoughtfulness and an understanding attitude towards the situation's particular needs comes rewarding both results, both within your family life and beyond. Living with younger onset Alzheimer's can bring a unique set of challenges, but it doesn't have to define you. You are still in control of your life and empowered to create a plan that best suits your needs. Sporadic Alzheimer's is the most common form of the disease for people below 65 years of age who are diagnosed. And this means that there may be moments when you need extra support as well as resources available at each stage along the way. So let's talk about young onset Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease can devastate families of all ages, including those affected by younger onset or early onset Alzheimer's. Those with this condition may find themselves in an earlier stage than someone later diagnosed due to their age at diagnosis. Yet it is not fully understood why some develop such a tragic disorder so young. There are certain genetic risk factors that increase vulnerability for developing Alzheimer's. Sporadic cases still occur without any traceable family history, making this progressive and incurable brain disorder truly unpredictable. With younger onset Alzheimer's disease, receiving an accurate diagnosis can be challenging. Many patients have been misdiagnosed due to a number of reasons. Their age or medical history may cause doctors to overlook it from the start and instead attribute symptoms to factors like stress, menopause, or depression. While relatively uncommon compared to other cases of young onset Alzheimer's disease, a genetic mutation in one of three genes, the AP gene, the PSEN1 gene, or the PSEN2 gene, are passed down through family lines that could potentially cause its development as well. So if you have family members who also suffer from this condition, I would check for your doctor for any potential hereditary links. And if you have young onset Alzheimer's linked to one of these three genes, or you carry a form of these genes without symptoms, talk to your doctor. I'm going to encourage you to participate in a research study because by studying young onset dementia, researchers hope to learn more about the causes and progression of the disease and develop new treatments. Now, let's address the importance of getting an accurate diagnosis. When it comes to young onset Alzheimer's, getting an accurate diagnosis is of the utmost importance. Not only do you need to rule out potential treatable causes of your symptoms, but physicians must also be aware that this form of dementia can manifest differently in younger individuals, which may lead them to misdiagnose younger onset dementia if they're not informed. And I'm finding a lot of doctors aren't aware of different types of dementia. So seeking a proper course of treatment as soon as possible helps safeguard against any negative impacts on the quality of life due to delayed care. And early diagnosis is invaluable for personal reasons too. Once diagnosed, family members have greater insight on how to support their loved one with this terrible disease while addressing so many big decisions, such as the financial planning and the legal matters that they need to address down the road. Sharing your diagnosis with an employer gives further protection by providing clarity around circumstances at work, allowing coordination between all parties involved accordingly. Some employers may be willing to work with the family to allow their loved one with this diagnosis to work with a lighter load. A timely diagnosis is also important because those that cannot continue to work need to apply for Social Security disability benefits under the compassionate exceptions rule. This will allow the family to avoid the arduous and painful government process and have timely response to avoid total financial devastation. It also allows the family to continue to have medical coverage. Although it will be a Medicare Advantage program with limited options, I look at it as something is better than nothing. So let's talk about the signs and symptoms of young onset dementia. Dementia is just not memory loss and change in thinking processes or cognitive function. It is a complex condition with subtle symptoms that can be hard to spot for even the most observant eye. But it's not impossible. Keep an open mind when it comes to any behavior or changes from those you love, as this may indicate some form of dementia in the very early stages, and a prompt diagnosis means immediate help. So I'm going to talk about the warning signs so that we can all have a better understanding of this difficult disease. I'm hoping to give you a deeper understanding of how the brain works and how people with dementia may start to exhibit signs and symptoms as early as 10 years before they receive an official diagnosis. Dementia can be hard to spot as the symptoms may not always be obvious. However, some signs of dementia are more recognizable than others. A perfect example is a person's inability to understand sarcasm. If you observe a family member having difficulty with understanding emotional meanings and taking things literally instead of figuratively, that could be one of the earliest signs of dementia. Here's a perfect example. A person may hear the phrase, "the early bird catches the worm," which means to us, if you get ahead of the game and you make a real effort, it pays off. To them, the phrase, "the early bird catches the worm," suggests that those who are eager, put in some work, and don't hesitate will try to find success. An alternative way to say this might be seize your opportunity for success. A person in the early stages of dementia are actually thinking you're talking about a bird and worms. Of course, this is a very concrete interpretation that indicates an impaired function in the frontal lobe region. It may mean that there's cause for concern when determining if there might be an early indication of this dementia. And it's important to recognize these warning signs to take steps towards proper diagnosis and care. because you want to begin sooner rather than later. Another early warning sign of dementia is a person that experiences falls and clumsiness or frequently trips over things can be a very early sign of dementia. Of course, falls and clumsiness can be also caused by a variety of impairments, including difficulties in perceiving visual spatial relations or maintaining balance. These problems tend to worsen as dementias progress. In the very early stages of dementia, this can be an early indication that something else is going on. Falls and frequent trips in younger age groups may be a very early warning sign of dementia. Now we're going to talk about socially inappropriate behaviors. Can be a very early indication of impaired decision making caused by dysfunction in the brain's emotion centers. This manifests as a lack of consideration for social norms and rules, along with impulsive acts driven by euphoria or irritability, not to mention changes in appetite. It's important that these behaviors are monitored before they get out of hand and cause harm. Of course, these are the behaviors that many teenagers exhibit. So when it occurs in younger people with dementia, it will be out of character for that person. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that these types of behaviors occurred and were dismissed. Bruce Willis started to have noticeable problems when remembering lines or finding the right word in conversations. And then I had my pastor's wife story, which she started to swear and make inappropriate comments years before she was diagnosed. And as a postmenopausal female, we all have those moments when we have difficulty finding the right word, and we call them senior moments. But there is a difference between normal aging word finding problems and making up a word or replacing it with an entirely different word. When a person exhibits a loss of judgment and has disregard for rules or has consistent acts of impulsivity, irritability, hypersexuality, euphoria, or even a change in eating habits, these may be the very early signs of young onset dementia. For elderly people suffering from dementia, daily tasks may present a challenge even in the early stages of dementia. They can recognize individual items such as keys and locks, but are unable to complete the sequence necessary for using them together. For example, they may not be able to put the key in the lock or turn it. Additionally, they may identify an object like a key without remembering its purpose of opening locks. Motor skills also become impaired due to memory loss, thus impacting gestures that have predefined meaning. And these range from simple actions like waving hi to somebody or raising your thumb up in an approval through sign language, or like putting your finger to your mouth to symbolize being quiet. We've all had our teachers do that to us, telling us to hush. These are also signs you may see in early onset dementia. Younger people with dementia that is undiagnosed may be able to hide these moments from others for a while until the disease progresses. I had a very young client that enjoyed playing golf on weekends with his friends. Over a period of 2 years, his teammates noticed he took very long trying to determine which club to use. When his fellow golfers would question his choice of clubs for a shot, he would laugh it off and make a smart comment and blow off their concerns. One man that worked with him noticed issues at work that were negatively impacting his job performance. I'd like to make you aware that sometimes when a person loses their job, it may be the first time a family realizes there is something cognitively wrong and there's some cognitive decline occurring. So often we dismiss things only to later realize that it was the first signs of early onset dementia. Now I'd like to address apathy or a lack of empathy. A lack of interest in the people and events around them, combined with a diminished understanding of family members' emotions, can lead those close to someone feeling hurt or dismissed. This disconnection can result in social isolation as a person with early dementia becomes more disconnected from their loved one's feelings. It is so common for a diagnosis to be made after close relationships are already strained due to this behavior. And this is a huge symptom that is often seen as depression or lack of interest in others. I recently was talking to a friend. Her husband was a very successful businessman. He was on the way up on the corporate ladder. Over time, he lost interest in his work, his hobbies, or his family. He started going to work late, then started not to get up and go at all. He stopped making or returning phone calls. His primary care physician ordered a psychiatric assessment for depression at the request of his wife. Further extensive testing resulted in the diagnosis of young onset Alzheimer's disease. Finances can be a very tricky subject for many, but those living with dementia face an additional challenge. Difficulty making decisions combined with rigid thinking and cognitive deficits caused by memory issues means that managing money becomes much more difficult than it was otherwise. I had a young social worker that was able to hide her deficits for years. She came from a very large family. She started to avoid family function, using work as an excuse. But it was only after she called one of her siblings about having her light shut off did the family realize there was something wrong. When they went to her home to help her, they found she had literally hundreds of Post-it notes throughout the house with reminders. They learned that she was paying some bills twice and not paying some others at all. Dementia can profoundly impact a person's ability to communicate, leading to difficulty with both verbal and written expression. Depending on the form of dementia experienced by an individual, their capacity for communication may vary widely. Some cases see a loss of speech early on in the disease process, like Bruce Willis, while others suffer from difficulties understanding what has been said. They have a slowed processing of information and have a lack of a slowed processing of formulating a response. I think that the most perfect example of this would be the recent debate of the Pennsylvania congressional race. John Fetterman, after suffering a massive stroke, had what we call receptive and expressive aphasia. Simply put, Mr. Fetterman was unable to understand verbal communications. He required a computer to translate what was being said to him and have it show up on his screen in written form. Then he had to take time to read that and process that information and formulate a response. His words were often garbled and his responses were often repetitive. Hey, I'm not suggesting Fetterman has dementia. That's not at all. But he is the most public figure that has severe communication issues. Because of his age, it's expected that he'll make a full recovery. In other circumstances, a person may not understand the written word or understand verbal communication. As I pointed out earlier, people that worked on the set of a few of Willis's movies observed him struggling to remember lines at times or saying what he read. Another symptom of early onset is inflexibility or rigidness may be another early sign. In the early stages of dementia, a person can experience a sense of fear of unfamiliar experiences or any change in routine. Though we may be familiar with who is around us or where our home is, these memories become harder to access as dementia takes hold. For this reason, individuals living with dementia often struggle when it comes to time for changes in their daily schedule. They have their routines from the paths they take to habits practice, and making any deviation in their routine feels very risky to them. So, being aware of the early indicators of dementia can also be invaluable. However, this is also a tough task since its symptoms are often difficult to recognize. The last common sign that may be an indication of early onset dementia is that affected individuals during a conversation may speak about unrelated topics during conversations or not respond at all. Therefore, it is important for family members and loved ones to pay attention because even subtle changes in behavior could potentially reveal unseen issues with cognitive ability. This has been brought to you by caregiverrelief.com.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode of Caregiver Relief. If you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for future videos, topics you'd like us to cover, or even improvements you'd like to see on the channel, drop them in the comments below.